The first thing I heard was the sound of engines. Not one truck. Not two. A whole line of them. I stepped out of my farmhouse and froze. 6 black SUVs were coming up my private dirt road, kicking dust into the morning air. Behind them was a white pickup with a large metal trailer. And at the front of the convoy was a woman I knew very well. Karen Whitmore. The president of the HOA. She climbed out of the first SUV wearing sunglasses, a bright red jacket. And the kind of smile people wear when they already believe they have won. But what made my stomach tighten wasn't Karen. It was the men standing behind her. 4 of them were wearing dark tactical clothes. 2 had their hands near holsters. I looked at the convoy, then at my locked gate. "Karen," I called out, "what are you doing on my property?" She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed at my farmhouse. "That's the property." One of the men nodded. Karen turned toward me. "Mr. Mercer, you have been given enough time to leave." I almost laughed. "Leave?" She pulled a folded paper from her jacket and held it up. "This farm is being taken under HOA emergency authority." I stared at the paper. Then I looked behind her at the armed men. "You sent an armed convoy to my farm. Over an HOA violation." Her smile disappeared. "This isn't about a violation anymore." She took 2 steps toward me. "It's about ownership." That word hit differently. Because there was one thing Karen didn't know. And if she had checked the county records before bringing those men onto my land, she never would have come here. I walked slowly toward the gate. "Karen, turn around." She laughed. "You still don't understand." She lifted her hand. The men beside her pulled out a pair of bolt cutters. My jaw tightened. "Don't touch that gate." He kept walking. "Last warning," I said. Karen looked directly into my eyes. "You don't give warnings anymore." The bolt cutters slammed against the lock. Clang. My farm went silent. Even the dogs stopped barking. I reached into my pocket and pressed one button on my phone. A small red light appeared on the security camera above the barn. Karen didn't notice. "Cut it," she ordered. Clang. The lock snapped. One of the men pushed the gate open. They started walking onto my land. That was the moment I stopped trying to reason with her. I raised my phone. "Karen." She turned. "Yeah." I held up the screen. "You're being recorded." She smiled again. "I don't care." Then she said something that made me realize this wasn't just about my farm. "We're not here to inspect your property." She pointed toward the far end of my land. "We're here to take it." For the first time, her voice sounded nervous. Almost like she was afraid of what might happen if I refused. I looked toward the tree line. There was an old stone marker buried near the edge of the field. My father had always told me never to move it. I had never understood why. Until that morning. Karen turned to the armed men. "Secure the house." 2 of them started toward my front door. I stepped in front of them. "No." One man reached inside his jacket. Karen smiled. "Call whoever you want." She leaned closer. "The sheriff won't help you." I stared at her. "Why?" Her smile became wider. "Because he's already been told you're trespassing." My blood went cold. She hadn't just planned to take my land. She had planned everything. The false report. The armed convoy. The fake authority. Even the police. But Karen had made one mistake. She had assumed she knew who owned this farm. And she had no idea what was hidden inside that old county record. I looked at the men surrounding my house and calmly said, "You should have checked the name on the deed before you came here." Karen frowned. "What name?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "My real name." Then I reached into my truck, pulled out a sealed county document, and placed it on the hood. Karen's face changed the second she saw the official seal. She stepped closer. "Where did you get that?" I didn't answer. Because the document wasn't just proof that the farm belonged to me. It showed that the HOA had absolutely no legal connection to this land. And that someone inside Karen's organization had already tried to steal it once. Karen slowly lowered her sunglasses. That's impossible. I smiled. No, Karen. I looked at the armed men behind her. What's impossible is that you thought I wouldn't find out. And then my phone rang. It was the county sheriff. I answered on speaker. His first words made every person in Karen's convoy go silent. Mr. Mercer. Whatever you do, don't let them leave. I looked at Karen. She had finally stopped smiling. Because the sheriff wasn't calling to arrest me. He was calling because someone had just discovered exactly what Karen had done. The sheriff's words hung in the air. Don't let them leave. Karen stared at my phone. Then she looked at the armed men. What did you tell him? She demanded. I said nothing. The sheriff spoke again. Mr. Mercer, are you still at the farm? Yes. Good. Stay where you are. Deputies are on the way. Karen suddenly stepped forward. You can't do this. I looked at her. Do what? Call the police on us. I almost laughed. Karen, you brought armed men onto my property. You broke my lock. You tried to enter my house. And now you're angry because I called the sheriff. Her face turned red. You don't understand who you're dealing with. No, I said quietly. You don't understand who you're dealing with. A few minutes later, sirens appeared at the end of the road. Karen's men started backing away. But there was nowhere to go. Deputy vehicles blocked both ends of the road. The armed men slowly raised their hands. Karen tried to step behind them. A deputy pointed at her. Ma'am, step away from the vehicle. I'm the HOA president. I didn't ask what your job was. She froze. The deputy walked toward the broken gate and looked at the lock lying in the dirt. Who broke this? Nobody answered. I pointed toward Karen. She ordered it. Karen screamed. That's a lie. Then I held up my phone. The whole thing is on camera. Her face went pale. The deputy looked at me. You have the footage. Every second. That was the first major crack in Karen's story. The second came when the sheriff arrived. He walked straight past Karen and came to me. Mr. Mercer. We shook hands. Karen stared at him. You know him. The sheriff looked at her. Of course I know him. Then he turned to the deputies. That's Colonel Mercer. The entire convoy went silent. Karen's mouth opened. Colonel. I didn't say anything. The sheriff continued. Retired Army officer. Served over 20 years. And this farm has been in his family for 3 generations. Karen looked confused. But the HOA owns this land. The sheriff shook his head. No, it doesn't. He pulled a folder from his vehicle. That's what we've been investigating for the last 2 weeks. Karen's confidence disappeared. The sheriff opened the folder. Your HOA submitted a property transfer document to the county 6 months ago. Karen swallowed. It was legal. No, he said. It wasn't. He held up a copy. The signature on this document was forged. Karen looked at me. I finally understood why she had been so desperate to get onto my property. She wasn't trying to enforce an HOA rule. She was trying to finish a land theft. The sheriff continued. And the person whose name was forged was Mr. Mercer's father. Karen shook her head. That's impossible. I looked at the old farmhouse. My father died 3 years ago. The sheriff nodded. Which means someone forged the signature after his death. One of Karen's men suddenly stepped forward. I didn't know about that. Karen turned toward him. Shut up. The deputy immediately grabbed his arm. Thank you for making this easier. The men looked terrified. I was told the paperwork was real. Karen said the county had approved everything. Karen screamed at him. You idiot. The sheriff looked at the deputies. Take her. Karen fought against the cuffs. You can't arrest me. The sheriff calmly replied. We can when you break into private property, damage the gate, use false authority, and participate in a fraudulent land transfer. She looked at me one last time. You think this is over? I stepped closer. No. Karen smiled weakly. Good. I shook my head. It's just over for you. She was taken away. But I still had one question. Who helped her? The sheriff didn't answer until everyone else had left. He handed me another folder. There's something you need to see. I opened it. Inside were copies of county records, bank transfers, emails, and property maps. The HOA had been buying small pieces of land around the neighborhood for years. But there was a larger plan. They wanted to connect all those properties to a private development project. My farm was the missing piece. And my land sat directly on the only road leading to the proposed development. If they controlled my farm, they controlled the road. I looked at the map. Then I noticed something. There was another name on the documents. Not Karen's. A developer. The same developer who had donated money to the HOA. I looked at the sheriff. Karen wasn't doing this alone. He nodded. We know. 3 months later, the developer was charged too. The HOA board was removed. The fake property transfers were cancelled. The stolen money was traced. And every member involved had to answer for what they had done. As for my farm, nothing changed. The old gate was repaired. The stone marker stayed exactly where my father had left it. One evening, I stood beside it as the sun went down. For years, I had wondered why my father always told me never to move that stone. Then I finally understood. It marked the original boundary of our family land. The same boundary Karen had tried to erase. I put my hand on the stone and smiled. She had arrived with 6 SUVs. Armed men, fake paperwork. And the confidence that nobody would stop her. She left in handcuffs. And the land she came to steal was still standing beneath my feet. My phone buzzed. It was a message from the sheriff. Case closed. I looked across the fields. Then I typed back. Good. I put the phone away. Because the truth was simple. Karen thought she was taking a piece of land. She never realized she was walking into a trap. Built from 3 generations. Of records, cameras. And one family that refused to surrender what was theirs. And if there was one thing I learned that day, it was this. You can bring an army to my gate. But you still can't take what isn't yours.